Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Physics Corner with your host, Jake. And today I'm coming to you from a different corner. Still same show, different corner. Anyways, today we are going to be discussing my previous week in the world of physics. It was another exciting action-packed week in physics class. Although we didn't do as much as we have in the past weeks because we were given more time to work on our projects, as the date for those quickly approaches. We still did some physics. We finished up the end of the things we needed to learn for our projects. One of those was a discussion with impulse. Now, we had previously talked about impulse briefly, and we addressed it again last Tuesday. And I always like when we come back to topics because I don't seem to quite catch them or grasp them always the first time. I need another run at it. So the second time was a little bit easier. I understood impulse better. Impulse is, by definition, is force times time. In this case, it's the force of the motor on the car times the amount of time of the burn of the amount of time of the thrust of the motor on the car. We looked at a thrust diagram, and thrust diagrams come with every pack of motors. It tells you how much thrust is being applied to the car, and we learned that in that thrust diagram that the area of the diagram is in fact the impulse, and that by figuring out the area we get impulse. With impulse we can then solve for many other things. We can solve for velocity, acceleration, we can get distance traveled, we can get all sort of things by plugging that into the equation and then using other equations with the values that we find. And that's some of the stuff we did on Thursday. So kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit. Back to Tuesday, we talked about impulse, and then we talked about the thrust curves and how they relate to acceleration as well, because the thrust is the beginning, it peaks and causes the acceleration of the vehicle. And then we were given time to work together in our groups on our projects. And my group was pretty productive. We got quite a bit done that day on our project and moving quite along pretty well. In between classes, we worked on a quiz. We had a quiz about a thrust diagram, and we had to find the area. Then we needed to find the change in velocity, acceleration, the net or the average retarding forces. So we had to discover all of those with on the quiz. Now, we weren't given instruction on how to do all of that. We were asked to try to figure it out on our own. I thought I did okay on it, and then I got to class and figured out that I was pretty much wrong on all of it. Except the first 3 questions I did get right and I figured out. But on Thursday we started class with a discussion about that quiz, and David took us through each question and showed us how to solve each question. We were then given practice time after that to work a different diagram to try and figure out all of those things on our own, which I feel pretty comfortable with and felt I did pretty good, and I'm grasping that quite well, which is unusual for me. I usually struggle when it comes to the math section, but I found that this wasn't too difficult for me. Also on Thursday, we learned how to use Excel to do our graphs. Doing the graphs on Excel, the position versus time, acceleration versus time, and velocity versus time, is much easier. It made sense to me. I like to use Excel. I do pretty well with it, and doing those graphs in that made very, very much sense. It was easy to do. We were able to get a large portion of data for those graphs. So it worked out pretty good, and I like that. I like doing it that way, and we know how to do it for the projects to come. So, and then we were given time to work on our projects again, and we basically just worked on getting those graphs for our individual project, for our individual group data. So that's basically what we did Thursday. That was pretty much the week. It wasn't, like I said, we didn't do as much as we normally do. because we had a lot more time to work on our projects because they're quickly coming to an end. This project was a little bit rough for me because we didn't know what to expect. We didn't really know what we were doing. So I'm looking forward to the project to come, and I'm excited to learn more physics and to continue my journey. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next week on Physics Corner.